Welcome to another episode of the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce and Zach Hewlett are here again, and today we're joined by Chad VanLueven. How you doing, Chad?
Doing great. Yeah.
Good. Where are you calling from tonight?
So I'm in Payson, Utah.
All right. Probably some of our listeners know where that is at.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, I think you're familiar with our format. We go through any story leading up to how you got to Scotland, how you got the call, anything to do with that you'd like to share, and then we'll skip over. We want to know what you've been up to since the mission, and then we'll go back and reminisce for a little bit. So start us out with, how it all started.
Yeah. So getting my mission call, I was pretty excited. My friends, my really close friends, were a year older than me, so they went on their missions a year before me. So I was kind of excited to go on a mission. Kind of wanted to do, I'd like to go foreign. I thought it'd be fun to be foreign and English speaking. My dad served in Australia, so that's something like that would be cool. So when I got my mission call, I was excited, and it was kind of cool. And I know I listened to Elder Cooley's interview with you guys, and the same sort of thing is my mission call was dated September 11th, 2001, which was kind of cool because I got it on the 13th, and it just always stuck with me that, despite, those terrible things that happened, that the Lord's work still needed to go forward, right? That the work was still going, missions were still being extended, and it was just kind of cool. So anyway, so I opened it up and saw Scotland, and like everybody told people I was going to, Edinburgh. But I was really excited for Scotland. When I was in high school, my senior year, I was on the basketball team. And in our preseason, we decided to watch Braveheart together as a team. Thought this would be a cool movie. One or two of us had seen it and thought this would be good. And it kind of inspired us throughout our entire season because we were a bunch of nerds. I grew up in St. George, Utah. And so like in our locker room before the game, someone would always do the William Wallace speech to motivate us. And so we'd get ready, we'd go out, we'd do all our warm-ups. And then when we get together and do our huddle, instead of, go team or whatever, we'd all yell freedom, because that's what William Wallace yells right before he dies. And so we're really inspired by that. So go through the whole season and we end up winning the state championship. And so we kind of dedicated it to William Wallace a bit. We had state rings and we put freedom on it because of William Wallace. And so when I got my mission call to Scotland, I'm like, this is the best, right? I've just been spending,
That's an amazing story.
That is pretty cool.
My God.
So spending my senior year really focused on Scotland and getting that. And so I pictured in my mind, right, I'm going to go to Scotland. It's going to be these little villages and everyone's wearing kilts. I'm going to be walking miles a day at each village. And then, And then I end up serving in Edinburgh, my first area. I'm like, okay, this is bigger than where I grew up by much larger. And so anyway, so I got Scotland. I was excited. All my teammates were really jealous of me. So I was the first one to go, first or second one to go by my teammates. And so, so I was really excited for that. And that was in, I got my call September 2001 and went in January 2002 is when I left.
Okay. Great. Yeah. All right. So skip over now. January, I guess, 2004, right?
Yeah. So got back January 2004. It was kind of an interesting experience coming home. So I came back to St. George, but when I had maybe 6 or 7 months left of my mission, my parents got divorced. And so it was kind of an interesting experience to come back and to that whole experience. I'm dealing with that, and I have 2 younger siblings, and my brother had moved out. My sister was still with my mom. So I lived with my mom for a while in St. George, just kind of working, did a few jobs, did construction. And then I, would have been August, came up north to Utah, northern Utah, to go to the U, to go to school. I had dreams of being a doctor. That was all through my mission, I thought I'm going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I broke my arm in high school and thought this could be cool because I went to an orthopedic surgeon, and did that. And then changed my major half a dozen times over the next 4 or 5 years, different things. So kind of did that. 2009, was a little bit burnt out with school. My dad also committed suicide that year. So I decided to take a year off to kind of just evaluate what's going on. I had a friend that got divorced as well. And so he moved in with me. And so we're both kind of figuring out, what do we do next? And I was thinking about my schooling and thought, I'm doing all this pre-med stuff and I don't love it. At that point, I was thinking about being a pharmacist. I thought I could do it. I'm smart enough to do it. I don't think I would love it, but I could make a ton of money. And I thought, that's not really a good thing for a job. I thought, what do I love? I'm like, I love history. And so I changed my major to history. So all my science and pre-med classes, right, went out the window. I went back to school, started taking history classes, loved it. Thought I never want to be a teacher, maybe a college professor. I'm a weirdo. But I thought when I changed my career, I'm like, I'd love to be one of those guys on the History Channel, right, that they interview, the tweed jacket, and you got all the books behind me. I thought, that's my dream. I told my advisor, I'm like, that's what I want to be. He's like, okay, go for it. So went back, ended up graduating 2013. Took me about 9 years off and on to get my bachelor's. And I thought at this point, there's no way I'm going to get my PhD and be on the History Channel. I'm going to be like 50 at that point. And so I'm like, I've got to figure out something else. During this whole time, I worked in a restaurant in Orem, Utah. I served, there's a fine dining, then I managed it for a few years. And I thought, well, these different options. I thought about looking at the State Department. I was going to go be a Foreign Service officer. But one night I was talking to some of my servers and just sharing stories this whole night. And I sharing stories about failed assassination attempts on Hitler. There's some really, really cool ones. If there's a whole separate podcast on that sort of stuff. But I thought I was telling these, how can my servers, I'm like, I really love just telling stories, especially talking about Hitler and just interesting things. I'm like, maybe I do want to be a teacher. And so I talked to my aunt like a week later, and she worked at the education department at UVU. And she's like, they're accepting applications right now. You should just apply and see what happens. I'm like, okay, why not? If it works out, great. If not, then it's not that big of a deal. It's like a year to get my teaching license. So went to UVU for a year, got my teaching license, finished that 2015. So 14 to 15, did that, and then got a job in Salem, Utah, teaching high school. And I've been there ever since. I start my 9th year in 2 weeks. And so I teach history. Yeah.
Wow.
And so it all kind of came from, loving stories about Hitler kind of pushed me towards teaching. And I guess I could say I credit Hitler to becoming a history teacher.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Maybe we will have you back on with the tweed suit and the bookcase behind you. Just stories.
We'll figure that out. So, yeah. So it's great. I like I said, I never thought I'd be a high school teacher or ever like it, but I love it. I don't want to be anything else. Like it's a lot of fun, and I teach fun classes, history classes and religion classes and stuff. So yeah, so that's great. And then see what else, 2018, end of 2018, December, met my wife online dating through the mutual app. So what was it? I asked her out on Christmas Eve, 2018, went on our first date in January of 19, engaged in April of 19 and married in July of 19. So it was a quick thing. So we've been married just over 4 years. We have a 2-year-old son. He just turned 2. His name's Kenobi. He's great. He's fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So we're huge nerds. And yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, so history and
you are Obi-Wan.
Yeah. He's little Kenobi, and
I love it.
So yeah, great. So that's basically everything since then. Just working and teaching, and
that's really cool. I love it.
So it's been good.
Yeah. All right. Well, take us back to, I guess, January 2002, and you can start at the MTC or Scotland, wherever you want. But we go through, areas, companions, and anything you want to talk about, really.
Yeah.
This is focused on you, so fire away.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in St. George, so flew out of St. George Airport, and it was kind of crazy because it was right after September 11th, and it was the old St. George Airport. If you guys ever been to the St. George Airport, it was tiny. It sat up on this little mesa, and I remember right after September 11th, like there's military, with their assault rifles and things. You had to walk through. Basically, just walk 10 feet through the building, then you're to the plane. So it was kind of weird going through all that security, which I wasn't used to before. But flew to Salt Lake, and then from Salt Lake I flew to Atlanta, and it was weird. I flew with all the Brazilian missionaries. All the missionaries going to Brazil were flying to Atlanta, and I got put on with them instead of going to Chicago with all the British mercenaries. So it was kind of fun with that, and then eventually ended up at the MTC. MTC was fun. I was excited. I think like a lot of people that served in Scotland, it wasn't the Provo MTC, right? We hear all those stories, and it's just, so I think our group had like 50 something in it. And so it was fun that we had, sacrament meetings together, and we attended the temple a few times together, and just, and it was a good group. I think we had like 7 or 8 of us that went up to Scotland.
Awesome.
So it was good. I know you've interviewed a couple of them, Cooley and Wright. were in my
Yeah.
group.
That's
And
right.
so, yeah, so I've listened to theirs. So up to Scotland, first night was kind of just a wild experience, I think, where, going out and chapping for the first time and doing Pratt's Hill at the beginning was kind of a cool thing. First companion was Elder Luter, Andre Luter. He was from Germany. He was awesome. We served in Edinburgh, is where we were, in Granton, in the northern part of Edinburgh, right there on the Firth. And Luter was cool. When I first met him, I had no idea he was German. He spoke English like an American. He had no German accent whatsoever. And so I remember talking to him. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to have a German accent. I didn't want a British accent. I wanted an American accent. And so that's what he had. And so you never would have known talking to him, at least right on the get-go. But he was cool. He was a big guy. I'm 6'5", and I think he was probably, I don't know, 6'3" or 6'4". And so I think kind of I heard of your guys, similar experiences where people see these massive, guys walking down the street, and
The
I think
dark
we had a
of
similar, yeah. We had a similar experience. We showed up in our black coats and knocked on a door, and the lady's like, "Oh, come in, come in." And so we came and sat down. She started telling us all these problems. We're like, "So we don't tell you about the Book of Mormon." She's like, "Oh, I thought you were the police. Get out." And so kicked us out because the police were coming. And
We had that exact same experience multiple times in Peterhead. That's really funny.
Yeah, our kids running away because we thought we were the police, and just the fun stuff. And so he was cool. He was into basketball, and I was into basketball a lot at the time. And so I remember the church building in Edinburgh got a basketball hoop. And so we set it up and would go and play with members and things. And then volleyball got really big. I know a lot of wards did football or soccer, but we did volleyball in Edinburgh. It was really fun. The sisters in the ward, one of the sister missionaries was a senior sister from Fiji. Sister, what was her name? Maiwiri, I think. But they were teaching like a ton of Fijians. And so they would show up on Saturdays when we played volleyball with a bunch of people from Fiji. And they were amazing. And it was so much fun because I was really competitive back then. I'm not at all anymore. But it'd be fun to just go and just play with these people that were just incredible. And so, so Elder Luter, it was fun. It's first 6 weeks. I only served them for 6 weeks. And, some new missionaries really get it. It took me a while to get it. It was just like, I don't know what I'm doing and trying to figure out what people are saying. There was a lady we were visiting, and she was telling us about how, that's probably like 3 weeks in, just about how her neighbor was sick and she had to go get his messages. And I was like, you're going getting his phone messages? That doesn't make sense. And then later I learned it was groceries. And I'm like, messages for groceries? It's crazy. But, that was my introduction. That's always funny when people are like, oh, it's English speaking, right? And you're like, kind of, but not really. So
that's true.
Just very crazy things. But so I did Elder Luter. I was with him for 6 weeks, and then he moved on, and I had Elder Schaefer, Daniel Schaefer from Spanish Fork, for 6 weeks. He was a cool guy as well. Again, I was new to the mission. I regret not. There's only 6 weeks that I didn't do better at. I don't remember a lot from there, and getting to know him a lot better than I wish I did. I think I met him once after the mission. I think I saw him at a reunion. But it was good. It was fun being in Edinburgh, being close to the mission home, being able to go to the Edinburgh ward and see President Sister Wilkinson and other missionaries, and go and get things when you needed from there. And so that was fun. I was also in Edinburgh when, I know in Elder Wright's interview, when he talked about being beat up, I think we went and visited him once in the hospital. And so it was kind of an interesting experience. Having that happen, like someone that came out with me, like just on the other side of the city, having that and be like, oh shoot, like what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah. But it's just amazing that he dealt with it the way he did, and was fine. And so, but yeah. So I was with Elder Schaefer for 6 weeks, and then got moved to Kilwinning over on the West Coast. It was a sisters area. And so myself and Elder Weaver, Kevin Weaver from Colorado, we whitewashed in after the sisters to the area. So it was fun. Really, my first memory is we walked into that flat, and it was, to use a Scottish word, it was mingin. Like, it was so gross. I don't even know who the sisters were before us, but like the carpet was like that thick of hair. The vacuum was broken. And so one day I remember like pulling it apart, and it was just clogged with hair. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like it was so gross. Like, I don't know how people, like, the sisters are supposed to be cleaner than us, but anyways, that was my first experience of walking into Kilwinning. I was like, this is gross. But
Did you actually fix the Hoover then to get
yeah,
it?
I just
Work
unclogged
again?
it. I
Was
just
clogged with hair.
pushed all the hair out, and it started vacuuming fine. And then I vacuumed all the hair up again, and
Oh my god!
it was a little bit better. But it was
Wow.
crazy.
That was
But yeah,
one thing I always thought was funny is they never taught us how to like upkeep the things in our flat to keep it clean. Like I didn't know how to fix a vacuum at that point in time, but
yeah, and I didn't really either. I'm like, I have some time. I can't remember what it was. It was a P day or something. I'm like, I'm just gonna open this up and see what's going on, and just packed. And
good
to me,
for
that's what
you.
they need to start teaching of, like, if your things aren't working, like, try to fix it. And then I don't know, but so,
Pretty good.
But Kilwinning was great. Like I said, Elder Weaver and I whitewashed in as part of the Irvin ward there on the West Coast, and it was a good ward. I think there were how many missionaries? There were 2 zone leaders in Irvin. There was a set of elders in Irvin, us, and then 2 sisters in Saltcoat. So there's like 8 missionaries in this ward. And so we had lots of interactions with them. We used to do service. Our service in Kilwinning is the whole area, like all those missionaries would go to the beach in Saltcoats and clean it. And it was a waste of time, really. I mean, you'd clean the beach, pick up trash, and then an hour later it all washed back. And but it was fun. I mean, missionaries getting together and hanging out on a beach, and and jumping off of sand dunes. Or one day a bunch of jellyfish washed up, and we just like picked up jellyfish and put them all in the pile, and just weird things because we're young kids. That's what's crazy, I think, about missions is like the Lord has so much trust in children.
Yeah.
Like, and they're even younger now. Of like, I see the missionaries now. I'm like, you're children.
Yeah.
And you're doing this. Like, good for you. It's just amazing. Like
kids you were teaching 2 weeks before.
Yeah. Oh, seriously. I mean, my students are like, I got my mission call. I'm like, really? You're going on a mission? I had a kid. He wasn't even my student last prom. I had a kid like try to sneak in, and he told me to go to hell. And then like a week later, I saw his like senior graduation. I had him with his like Book of Mormon and missionary tag. I'm like, okay, I guess go for it. But I guess the Lord will. Yeah. Anyways, weird tangent. I could go off on teenagers. They're great. But anyway, so Kilwinning. Yeah, it was a good ward and in a good area. Interesting teaching pool. We taught a guy called John Taylor, who was a former heroin addict, and so it was kind of an interesting challenge with him. But he loved us. Never called us elder. Always wanted our first names. He would come to church, and I don't know, didn't have a quiet button. I remember giving a talk once, and at the end, he's like, "Yeah, Chad, go for it." And I was like, "God, you can't be yelling stuff in the middle of church." We sang a song. I think we sang the hymn "In Memory of the Crucified." And he turns to me really loud, says, "We're going to crucify him." I'm like, dude, you can't be saying weird stuff. But no, he was great. He ended up getting baptized and kind of got things turned around. I lost touch with him. But it was good. Like I said, working with Elder Weaver was really awesome. And worked well. It was fun to kind of get to a new area. I also forgot to mention in Edinburgh, our teaching pool is mostly Chinese students in Edinburgh. I think like my first few lessons were all to Chinese students. So Elder Luter and I would teach Chinese people. They had a girl that got baptized right before I got there. That was Chinese. And so we'd meet all these Chinese students. It was right during the Chinese New Year. And so in Edinburgh, Elder Luter and I would go and like eat Chinese food with like 13 Chinese students. It'd be really fun. Just, these 2 tall white guys sitting with all these Chinese students at the table eating authentic Chinese food. So it's kind of cool getting to Kilwinning and teaching more Scottish people with that. So I was with Elder Weaver for 3 months, and then he got moved. I know he was sad because we both whitewashed in, and I think he wanted to be there because we'd grown close to some people. There was a couple, Carl and Sandra. They were investigators who were just awesome people. Never joined the church, which is a shame, but they would come to church sometimes and were just really friendly, and we still keep in touch every now and again. I get a message from Sandra every now and again on Facebook after my son was born. She kind of messaged me, and I know Elder Weaver kept in touch with them. But so he was sad to go. But after Elder Weaver, I got Elder Little, Daniel Little. He was from England, Doncaster. He was just a cool dude. Trunky, super trunky. I think he had 4.5 months when he got to me, maybe 6 months, but he was ready to go. You guys, I think, had a good experience because I don't know if you've heard, like when I was out, they raised the bar. Like
Yeah.
it was Elder Ballard, I think.
Elder
talked about raising the
Ballard.
bar.
Yep.
And so there was a group of missionaries, like, I don't know if it's bad to talk about, but like prior to me that just, they never would have made it, I think.
They went under the bar.
They went under the bar for sure. Unfortunately, a lot of them were like English missionaries, but they just, like, they would do crazy things and just like, pretend to be Moses on top of their houses in the high street and just like send, packages of poop to each other or just like crazy things. And so Elder Little was kind of at the tail end of that. And so I love the guy. He was awesome, but just, I think he trunky and we didn't work. We did something. It was with Elder Little that we baptized John Taylor. And it was funny with him as well, because I said he's kind of weird. Like sometimes he'd want to play video games with him, and then he would teach him a lesson and just always talk about things. But before he got baptized, he asked if he could go, because we're talking about, you're going to wear the white clothes. And he's like, can I go commando in this? And we're like, probably not. Like, you should probably wear some underwear. And he did, because the day of, his zipper wouldn't zip up.
Goodness.
Oh, no.
Then he ended up wearing underwear. And then the water was freezing as well. And so it was weird.
Goodness.
But yeah, but Elder Little was fun. Like I said, there's something about being a missionary where, I don't know if you guys had the same thing where like the strangest people are just drawn to you as missionaries. Like there's something, I don't know whether it's the spirit or your name tag, but like we would have people, and I feel like every one of my areas, somebody would just come across the street and just tell you everything about their life. And I'm like, I don't need to know about any of this.
Yep.
I'm sure it was just missionaries having a reputation of being willing ears. We want to talk to people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't mean all types of people, but we had that reputation. So
yeah,
you probably saw the name badge from a million miles away, and they're like, "Hey, I know I can talk to these guys."
Yeah, we get it. Sober, drunk. I feel like there's so many mornings walking out, and it's like, somebody's still drunk from the night before had to come and tell us something or hug us, or I don't even know how many drunk men kissed me. Like, it was just, I don't know. Maybe it's just me that happened to, but it was just, yeah. So anyway, so when I was at Elder Little, we had all sorts of crazy people and stuff, but yeah, it was kill winning. So we had, like I said, the baptism with John Taylor was good, and Carl and Sandra were awesome. There's just lots of good people. The ward was really good, and serving around the other missionaries was fun. So I was there for 6 months, and then from there I moved up the coast to Greenock with Elder Webb, Jeff Webb. And I remember, I kind of forgot this. I was looking through my journals, but I forgot that when I learned I was going to be with Elder Webb, I wasn't happy. Because we did like a bi-zone activity, and I saw him because he's in Greenock and I was down in Kilwin. I'm like, this guy kind of is, I don't know, just rubs me the wrong way. So I learned I was going to be with him. I was like, oh, dang, I got to have a challenge. But I ended up loving him. We got together, and he was awesome. He was so cool. He was a convert. He's from Canada and had got baptized like a year before. And so I'm just like, you're amazing, dude, to like only be baptized for a year and go on a mission and do this. And so, and his companion before me was another one of these older elders who didn't really do much. And so it's kind of nice to be able to get back and work, because I didn't do a ton of work with Little, and he wasn't doing a ton with his companions. We were able to get there. I was sort of the senior companion at that point, even though it wasn't that big of a difference. And so it was fun. Greenock was an awesome town still on the coast. And it was a big area. It kind of covered going along the Clyde from Port Glasgow to Greenock to Gurrock and then down to Largs. And so we had this huge area. And they had a good ward. It was a small ward. I think it's a branch now, because it just kept losing members. But they had a really nice building. It was a huge building. But the bishop was really cool. And just really good members that were there. And so Elder Webb was cool. We met a girl. Her name was Tony Marshall. She was from Germany. She was living with some members. The members was a married couple. I think, what were they called? Schmitz, I think. He was from Germany. She was from England, maybe Leeds or somewhere. And so she was living with these members. And so we'd go and teach her. And she ended up getting baptized, which was cool. Elder Webb baptized her. She ended up kind of falling away a little bit later. I think just had sort of butted heads with the family she was living with and moved in with a bunch of Muslim guys, and just a bad situation, and kind of fell away. So hopefully she's out there somewhere. That's the thing, is I never know. And hopefully, these people that we interact with. Yeah, but it was fun. There was a senior couple in Greenock, the Siswicks, that were just the nicest couple. They were so awesome. And Elder Siswick was fun because, he's one of those guys that just tells it like it is. And he just served in all these capacities in the ward, and just was fun just to be around. Elder Webb and I got roped into being part of the road shows. I don't know if you guys ever done road shows before, like in the church, where each ward puts on a little play.
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
Oh,
so I remember
yeah.
doing it when I was a kid, but the stake, what stake is that? Paisley Stake decided to do road shows. And so Elder Webb and I got roped into being in the Greenock Ward's road show. And so we have to do practices, and they did like a Scottish version of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And so Webb and I were dwarfs. And I'm 6'5", and I think Webb was probably 6 foot or just under 6 foot. And they gave us these foam orange beards. Now I can have, but and we wore those See You Jimmy hats with the orange hair, and we all had Scottish names. I can't remember. Mine was Mingin. That was Mingin the dwarf. I think one was Baki. I can't remember what the others were. But we had to go and
you have a video of this?
I don't. I have a picture somewhere of me and Webb. I gotta see. I think I have my pictures right here. But of me and Webb doing it. But I don't know about a video. I think this was 2000. It would have been 2002.
Oh,
so
the dark
today where where everyone has all these things. And so we had to go to Paisley and be a part of this, and we sang some Scottish version of the mining song, from Snow White. And so anyways, it was fun. That ward was fun, and we did lots of crazy things. Oh, yeah, I don't know if you can see. There's me. There's Elder Webb with our foam painted orange beards and our See You Jimmy hats.
Fantastic.
I think we had our Zone hoodies, and yeah. And we're we don't know what we're
excellent
doing. But it was, it was fun, different than normal missionary stuff. So yeah, I feel like Elder Webb and I had some good. We had a few run-ins with NEDs. One of them was kind of my fault. So we got there. I feel like it was only a few days since I got into Greenock. We'd go and have dinner with a less active in Gurrick, which is right next to Greenock. And we stopped the bus, we're walking to this less active member's house to have dinner. And these kids are at the park, and they're yelling at us, and, like Scottish kids do. And they're saying stuff, we're kind of just ignoring them. And then they start saying stuff about, whatever. And then they see our name tags. And they say, "Oh, Jesus Christ, he sucks wanks." And I don't know what I said. I said, "No, that's your mom." And once I said that, I realized, oh shoot, I probably shouldn't have said that. And he's like, "What the? No, my mom doesn't suck wank." And so we're right at the member's house. And so they throw a few rocks at us, but we walk right in. And I'm like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry, Elder Webb. That was totally my bad. That was not right at all as a missionary. And I thought, okay, that'll maybe be the end of it. 3 days later, we were in Greenock, a couple miles away, and we run into these kids. And they're I don't know, 12 to 14 years old. And they come up, "Oh, my mom does it." I'm like, "I'm sorry, guys. That was my bad. I don't know what it was. I'm so sorry. We didn't mean it." And "Yeah, that's right." And as we walked away, they started throwing rocks at us again. And they followed us. We just kept walking. Elder Webb wanted to go back and fight him because he got hit in the leg with a rock. And I'm like, "No, we're not going to fight. Let's just keep walking." And they followed us for probably 15 minutes. Didn't ever come and actually confront us, but just followed us, maybe 10 or 15 back. They pulled out the little pocket knives and threw rocks. Eventually we went around a corner of this bridge and lost them. And I'm like, "I'm sorry, dude. I didn't know this was going to come back and get us." But hopefully that's the end of it. And then a couple days later, we ran into him again. Same sort of thing of I'm like, "Dude, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean it." And as they're kind of arguing with us, we saw these kids hanging out this window, and they were probably 18 or 19, and they're yelling stuff at us. And I'm like, "I'm not going to say anything. Never again am I saying anything to anybody." And so we start walking away, and the kids start following us again, and these older kids start running full speed at us. And I'm like, "Oh shoot, we're gonna get in a fight." But the older guys came, and they stopped the younger kids from harassing us. And then I never saw those kids again, but I learned not to say anything about anybody's mom. like that. And then it's crazy. Like a week or two later, we were in Port Glasgow, a couple miles further east, and it was probably like 8 o'clock at night. We were walking down this dark street. It was dark. We ran into a couple kids. They were probably like 11 or 12. They're outside smoking. And they're like, hey, we heard you ran away from so-and-so the other day. And I'm like, how do you guys know? These are 3 different cities. And we're running into you guys all over the place. Like, what is going on?
Well-connected Neds.
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, so we had a few run-ins with Neds, like nothing serious. We had positive run-ins with Neds. I remember one day we went on exchanges. So our district was us in Greenock, the Siswicks, and then Oban. There were a couple others up in Oban. And so they came down on exchanges. Elder Spencer was a district leader, so he and I went out, and we were walking down the street and just chopping doors, and we ran into a guy who was incredibly anti and just kind of went off on us, and we're like, okay. So we left, went down a few houses, and ran into a group of 5 or 6 Neds, and we're kind of talking to them, and they were really friendly, and they're like, hey, can we come with you? And we're like, I guess. Like, so we went and we knocked on the next door. And the guy opens the door, and there's me, there's Elder Spencer, and like 6 Neds behind us on the doorstep. And we're trying to do our thing. And you could tell this guy was like worried that here's a bunch of people on this doorstep. So he said no. So we went to the next one, knocked on the door. Nobody answered. And so one of the Neds lifted up the mail flap and yelled into the house, hey, open up, it's the Mormons. And so Elder Spencer and I looked at each other like, well, we probably shouldn't keep doing this. And so he's like, let's go back. And so we walked back down the street, and that anti guy came back out and started yelling at us again, and all these pamphlets and how we were wrong. And he started telling the Neds about how we were trying to brainwash him, and he was giving them pamphlets, and they just started giving him cheek. They were just tearing up the pamphlets and just going off on him. And we walked away. Elder Spencer and this anti and the Neds were just like yelling at each other. And it was, yeah. Anyways, it was crazy. There's all sorts of run-ins with Neds. So anyways, Elder Webb, yeah, we had lots of good experiences and not so good experiences, I guess. But I was with him for 3 months. And then after Elder Webb, I trained Elder Hager, which I know you guys interviewed Elder Hager. And he kind of talked about this experience and that he was the only missionary who came to Scotland at transfer. And so I remember at the zone conference before, when you'd get the little newsletter. What was
the Harvester?
The Harvester. And it showed who's leaving and who's coming in. We always thought, oh, only one person's coming in. I wonder who that trainer's going to be. And it ended up being me. And so I remember joking with elders on the train out to Edinburgh of like, what's it going to be like with this? And so it's kind of interesting. Just me and Elder Hager, and I think one of the assistants and President Wilkinson, just kind of having dinner and doing our meetings together. There's no surprise about where you're going or who your companions are. Like, hey, Elder Hager, it's me. Let's go. But he was great. And so, yeah, he was from England, Southern England. Yeah, really excited to be in doing the work. And so we came in, and Greenock was good. We had a couple baptisms. I know we kind of shared these things with you guys already. We had Loriana Cox. Her husband was inactive, and we went and visited him one time with the Siswicks, and she kind of just said, I want to be baptized, which was exciting for Hager, because he knew in the mission, and hear somebody just saying, I want to be baptized, like without really any work on our part. And so we taught her the lessons and helped her husband kind of get active again, get the priesthood, and he was able to baptize his wife, which was really, really cool. Awesome. And they've stayed faithful. In 2017, I went back to Scotland for a couple of weeks just on my own, just kind of went around. But I went to the Greenock for church one of those Sundays, and he was the branch president at the time, and they were just doing awesome. And it was just so cool to see, right, this family that was, decided to make a change and have stuck with it, and it was awesome. So. Yeah, and their whole family, like his whole family, the Coxes were all members or inactive members, and so I don't know how it spread, but hopefully they're able to bring some of their other family members. But they're all cool. I also remember that family, the Coxes, were all cool because all of them, the mom and Stephen, the son, Loriana, like they all winked a lot. Like they'd look at you and like wink about everything, and it's kind of a funny little thing. But yeah, and then we had another baptism again. Elder Hager talked about this. Edward Rennie, he and his mom showed up to the ward one day and just started coming to church for like a couple months. They would come, didn't really interact with anybody, but just came. They were paying their tithing the whole time, is what the bishop told us. And just one day said, hey, I want to be baptized. And we're like, okay, awesome, let's do it. And so got him the lessons and got him baptized. And I ended up baptizing Edward. And when I baptized John, the heater on the font broke when I was in Kilwitting. But this time in Greenock, it was too hot. Like we got in and it was so uncomfortable for Edward. Okay, we'll do it quick, but at least it's not freezing. It was like a super hot tub. But yeah.
They have to make a practice in Scotland to fill up those fonts at least once every 2 weeks. So we know that the water heater is working. We've heard so many stories of it functioning and not functioning. And
freezing and scalding.
Just insane.
Yeah, you never knew what you're going to get in some of these fonts. And
oh man,
but yeah, so that was fun. So Elder Hager and I, we got a lot of good things, and like I said, saw a few people baptized, and like with the Cox's, family coming into it, and they got sealed. And I don't know. I was terrible keeping in contact. I don't know what happened with the Rennies, but hopefully they continued on. But yes, I was in Greenock for 6 months total, 3 with Webb and 3 with Hager, and then moved to Motherwell to be one of the zone leaders. And I was companions with Elder Benyon, Laird Benyon from Tacoma, Washington. And it was fun. I was really excited. I feel like I was really starting to get the, a little bit into it, but really starting to get the groove of things and understanding, what it's like to really be a missionary and being a zone leader. We worked hard, but we also played hard, find fun things to do. And that's what I tell when I got people have asked me for, like, I'm going on a mission, what advice do you have? I'm like, work hard and trust the Lord, but don't burn yourself out. Like, have fun. Like, I would have times with different companions, like, okay, we're going to go chap this street, but on the way there's a castle. Let's stop and look at the castle on the way back. Or, right, here's this park. Let's go through the park and then we'll go chap. Or just, we're going to sit on this bench for 10 minutes and watch this rainstorm approach us because we know we're going to be in it for the next 2 hours chapping. So let's just enjoy the moment and do it. And so, yeah, I felt like I had that a lot in Greenock. I mean, I guess everywhere rained all the time.
It's great advice, though, just to enjoy the moment.
Yeah. Like I said, work hard and do what you can, but doesn't have to all be work. Like, enjoy where you're there. And there's so many cool things. Wherever you go, I think any mission you go, there's people and sights and food and all sorts of cool things you can enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah. But I was in Motherwell with Elder Benyon. We served together for 4.5 months. It was a long time. But we got along really, really well. He's super intelligent and just fun and cool. Before I got there, they were teaching a guy called John O'Reilly. Benyon and his former companion, Elder Wiggins, I think left would become an AP, I think. We ended up baptizing him. So Elder Wiggins came back and Benyon baptized him. Just a good, just solid dude. Had his struggles like everybody. But the ward in Motherwell was good. There's, like every ward, again, there's interesting people. We had one guy, he was the bishop's dad, who, really good member, would go to the temple, I think, once a month down in Preston for like a week and just do session after session after session, but would come back in testimony meeting, just start sharing things that, probably shouldn't have left the temple. Talk about, he's like, we'd get up and say, so the other day I was standing at the veil, and we're like, and it was like, okay, I can't remember his name now. What was his name? I don't remember. We took him on exchange a few times. They start telling people about his quad. We're like, no, let's just focus on the Book of Mormon right now. And yeah, but they were good. They had some interesting, like I said, interesting people with all of them. I remember we had an experience, Elder Benyon and I, it was kind of a challenge. We were sitting in a ward council and they had a guy who wanted to come back to church. His mom was a member and he was kind of a member, but I guess he was a pedophile and was going to go to jail. And so he wanted to come back to church to kind of like help his court case of like, here's a guy who's trying to fix his life, but didn't really, just wanted the image. I mean, we found out about it because Elder Benny and I went down and had lunch with his mom and he was there. Like, we had no idea about this at the time. And all these people would walk by and yell stuff at us. We were eating outside with them having lunch. And we came back and found out this guy was like a convicted pedophile and just did terrible, terrible things. And so his whole ward council of like, do we let him in the church or not? And Elder Benny were like, no, don't let this guy in. And President Wilkinson like could talk to the bishop, and he told the bishop like, no, like, don't let him in. Like, it's just going to ruin the image of things. Like, you just got to cut it off. And so we had interesting things with the ward. She ended up dying. We had to go to her funeral, which was weird. I also forgot to mention in Greenock, we had a sister Mackay, really, really nice, bought us gifts for presents, bought us presents for Christmas, but ended up dying afterwards, like in the new year of 2003. And like her kids wanted nothing to do with the funeral. And so the ward had to plan the funeral. And then there's a weird fight. It went on for like a month before we got to bury her. But they did like I'm trying to remember, like a traditional Scottish funeral where like a guy in a coat and a top hat like walked in front of the hearse all the way to the cemetery. And then they had the missionaries. So it was Elder Hager and I, and then two other missionaries. I don't remember where they came from. Maybe it's from Johnston or somewhere. But they came and helped us because we lowered the body into the grave. Like they had ropes on her coffin and we had to lower her. And she was kind of a big lady. And I'm like, hopefully we don't drop her. Like that would be like the worst thing if the missionaries dropped Sister Mackay. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, we had funerals in Motherwell as well. I know I'm kind of jumping around
That's all right.
as I remember things. But yeah, Elder Benny and I, he was cool. Like I said, we had a lot of fun together. I don't know if they did them when you guys were there, but zone leaders used to do calendars, like monthly calendars, with all the things going on. And so Elder Benny was really big into like making them fun. And so we'd work together because we have kind of similar senses of humor, where like we did one that was all based on like the early days of the church. We found like a heading from an old newspaper called The Mormon. And this is all pre-Photoshop. So like we'd find magazines and cut them out and like put pictures of all the different missionaries of like, and talk about stories like, you read early church accounts of like people being rebaptized. And so it was all this like weird stuff of like, Elder so-and-so in the brand or in the zone, swore at some Ned and had to be rebaptized. And so we did that. We had one based on like communism, but it was all like church leaders. And so like pictures of like people holding up Mao Zedong, but we cut out and put like Joseph Smith's head there. And we had plans to make t-shirts of like an old Brigham Young, kind of like those Che Guevara shirts. I don't know if you ever saw those that people wore, but it was like an old, like young Brigham Young with long hair. Like we had it made, but then Benyon left and it didn't work out. But anyways, so we made zone calendars and did all sorts of crazy things. And being zone leaders, we got to go around on exchanges a lot, which was fun. And people would come and stay at our flat for conferences, and Spoons was big when I was there.
Spoons, wow.
Spoons, yeah. And so we'd get, 6 or 10 elders at our flat before conferences. And we upped it. We would add the bad taste game to Spoons. And so if you lost Spoons 3 times, then everybody else would go in the kitchen and make something for you to eat. And we got the nastiest things. One of my favorite that an elder had to do is we took a Cadbury cream egg, we cut it in half, scooped out all the good stuff, put in tomato paste, which may have been expired, I don't know. Like some spicy mustard, then melted a piece of like cheese over the top of it, and they had to eat it.
Oh my Lord.
I had one that was like oatmeal and teriyaki sauce and pepper and just again, we're children. Children are out teaching the gospel and they do stupid things, but to keep us entertained. And
as I've said before on this podcast, it's a tame frat house.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like it was fun. Like we had fun and everybody enjoyed it. And Spoons gets violent and we had broken spoons and bent fingers, but so it was fun. Like I said, I served Elder Benyon for a long time. And so we grew really close and I finished him out. And so he finished his mission with me after 4.5 months. And then I served with Elder Anderson that I know you interviewed for 6 weeks. He came in where he's from Nevada. And just a good, solid guy, just really cool. Again, I like all my companions. I feel like I got along with them all pretty well. Whether they say the same about me, I don't know. I feel like I got along with them. But Elder Anderson was great. We were only together for 6 weeks. But we had, again, he shared this experience. We ran into a guy called Alex McPhee, who was deaf. And so we chapped into him and tried to communicate with him. And so he asked us to come back. And so I remember we got together and, cut things out of magazines and wrote out basically the whole first discussion on papers and put pictures and went back and taught him the first discussion just using pictures and things. And he seemed really interested. So I invited us back to help him because he needed to repaint his house. So we went back another day and cleaned his kitchen, just scrubbed grease off the walls, then went back and painted. And then I ended up moving out. But Elder Anderson talked about, he ended up getting baptized there was a member in Glasgow, I think, or Campus Lang who had studied sign language for years and years and had no idea why. But then they got in contact and she was able to help teach these things. They ended up getting baptized. And which is cool. And he ended up going to the temple. Alex McPhee did. I remember he came out to Bountiful. He stayed with Elder Watson, who later went to Motherwell. And so I met up with them and we had breakfast together, but just kind of a cool experience of just how the Lord's preparing people in different places. And right, we get these prompts to do things you never know. Maybe it will help someone now. Maybe it'll help someone 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
Right. You never know.
It's very true.
And so it's just kind of a cool thing. And so, yeah, so I was with Elder Anderson for 6 weeks and then moved up to Inverness for my last area. I was with Elder Watson, Trevor Watson from Bountiful. And I was excited. I knew Elder Watson a little bit. When I left Kilwinning, he replaced me to kind of finish out Elder Little. I know Elder Little was really worried because Elder Watson's dad was secretary to the First Presidency. Could see him in conference every week. And he's like, oh no, I can't be Trunky because Elder Watson's being my companion. And so he finished me out, or Elder Watson replaced me in Kilwinning. And then when I was a Motherwell zone leader, Watson was in Coatbridge for a little bit. So we'd go on exchanges. And so then we were able to be companions finally in Inverness. So it was really cool. And then he ended up going to Motherwell. So we just kind of served around and served similar areas a lot. But being a zone leader in Inverness was awesome. Motherwell was really, really cool. I thought, again, that's where I really hit my stride. It was in Motherwell that I found out that my parents got divorced. And I remember meeting with President Wilkinson, and he's like, because he'd heard from my stake president or my bishop or something about this. And he's like, do you want a blessing or something? I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good. I am so focused on the work right now. Like, I'm not even going to worry about it. I've got 6 or 7 months until I go home. Like, if I worry about it, it's just going to affect me. Like, I'm just going to do my work and I'll deal with it in 6 months because I've got nothing to do to change it. And so when I got to Inverness, I was still working hard and just really in that mindset, but also having fun as well. And it's Inverness, where there's so many cool things. It's finally moved up to the Highlands that I start to see my vision when I was watching Braveheart as a high school student. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is Scotland now that I was always envisioning. Because we had a huge area. I don't know how it changed when you guys got there, but we had, from Nairn in the east all the way to the Isle of Skye in the west and down to Glencoe and Fort Williams. Like, it was a huge area. And so we had a car there. We had a car in Motherwell as well. Also, that was a big area. But Inverness, we were able to go out a lot. Went to the Isle of Skye a few times, which is just incredible. I don't know if you guys have been out to the Isle of Skye.
I have not.
It's on the bucket list.
Yeah,
yep.
For sure. Like, it is so cool. Like, it's one of my favorite places. And we had a member that lived out there. And so we went out and visited her every now and again. She hardly came to church because it was like a 2-hour drive to come out. And so it's hard, spending 4 hours of your day just to go to church. Driving, I guess. Went out there a couple times for P-days, went out for work as well. We got a media referral on the Isle of Skye in a village called Tarskaveg. And so we drove out there, Elder Watson and I, and you had to take a single track road and wait for sheep to cross to get out there. And it was right on the coast, kind of southwestern Isle of Skye, right on the coast. There's maybe 20, 25 houses. And we're looking at the show. I'm like, this is what I was picturing when I was thinking going to Scotland after Braveheart. I'm like, this is it. And in that town, we had a media referral, and we ended up chapping because the media referral wasn't in when we first got there. So we ended up teaching 2 lessons in Tarskaveg. And I'm just like, this is so awesome. It's hard to get back and follow up, but it was cool. And Elder Watson and I don't know, because we had Elder Vreens came in, or President Sister Vreens came in when I was in Motherwell, right at the end of Motherwell. And I don't know if he was new or just, he's a nice guy, but for whatever reason, he let Elder Watson and I go everywhere and anywhere we wanted. And so we went and visited the elders in Thurso a few times, drove up there, or took a train. We went to Orkney a couple times, took the ferry across there, which was fun. First time we went and saw all the standing stones. And Zach, you served in Orkney, didn't you?
Yeah, but I never saw the standing stones.
Yeah. So we did that. We did cairns. And then one of the times we went and worked on the dairy farm, which was awesome. I remember.
Did work on the dairy farm. Yeah,
we had to muck out the calf stalls and move the calves. And
okay.
I smelled like manure for a day afterwards, but it was awesome. And we had a fresh meal, breakfast and fresh milk. And
yeah.
And so we went to Orkney. We ended up going to Shetland. Before I got there, the Shetland elders and the branch up there were getting ready to dedicate their chapel. And so Elder Vreen said, you can go up there for the dedication to support the ward. And we're like, awesome. And so we drove out to Aberdeen to catch the ferry. and we met with the Aberdeen zone leaders, kind of hung out to get ready. I'm like, okay, our ferry leaves at 7. And so we drove over to the ferry and there was no boat. And we're like, what happened? And so we called around and realized they left at 5.
Oh.
And so the elder that I replaced, who was Elder Grinovich's from Lithuania, had been the one that set it up. And so I guess every day they switch from like 5 or 7 p.m. And so like we called President Freens, like, hey, we just missed the ferry. So like, is there another way? And he's like, well, maybe we can fly you up there. And then obviously they're not going to fly us up to just be there. And so, okay, maybe we work it out next time. So the next transfers, we end up going to Shetland. Took the, whatever it is, the 12 or 14-hour ferry from Aberdeen. Yeah. We got the little cabin. I remember we went out to dinner, we went out to get something to eat on the ship, and we ran across these guys. They played for the Shetland rugby team. And so they're like, oh, let's buy you a drink. And we're like, okay, well, we're not going to drink with you. But so they bought some lemonades and talked. And I mean, they were wasted, but the guy gave me his Shetland rugby tie. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So we went at dinner, we came back, and he said, hey, I gave you my tie. You've got to give me your tie now. This is exchange. And I was wearing the mission tie. And I'm like, okay, sure. And after I changed, I was like, oh, shoot, that was my only mission tie. And we have zone conference in 2 days and interviews. And this guy's tie stunk like smoke and booze. And so I remember in like the ferry in the bathroom, like washing my tie and things. And so I think I borrowed a tie from somebody when we got back. Anyway, so we went up to Shetland. I got there in the morning and kind of did work with the elders, went to church. And then that night, the Shetland Elders flat was tiny at the time. It was like smaller than a studio. Like there was no room for us. So we went and stayed with I think it was like the ward mission leader or branch mission leader. They had a shed in the backyard that had like electricity and a bunk bed. So Elder Watson and I went and stayed in the shed at the ward mission leader's house, which was kind of funny. And then woke up and they did service at like a bed and breakfast. So we went and helped them like fold sheets and stuff, and then took the ferry back home. And so we did that. And then we also went to the Isle of Lewis. So traveled out there to the Stornoway elders and hung out with them. You did go there. Yeah. Like I think there's like a 2 transfer period where I think we drove almost as much as the APs, if not more. Again, I don't know what President Freens was thinking when he let us do this. But Stornoway was cool. Again, tried to see castles and standing stones. Right, we're here. We're going to do the work, but also have fun. But on the way back, they canceled the ferry because of the weather was too rough. And so we had to stay another night with them. When we came back, it was one of those ferries. It was just like water coming up over the top and just insane North Sea rides. But yeah, so it was fun. I mean, Elder Watson and I did a lot of work. We also traveled a lot and had a lot of fun visiting elders and helping them. But we had a couple baptisms. A guy, Barry Cruden, got baptized right before I got there. That hadn't been confirmed. I guess there's issues. He had some health issues, and his dad, he was afraid to tell his dad about joining the church. He was like in his, 20s or 30s. But anyway, eventually we got him confirmed and given the priesthood. And then we had a guy, Billy Douglas, who got baptized while we were there. Just another good guy. I'm able to get him the priesthood. A good ward up there, just right on the River Ness. Inverness was just awesome. Again, it was kind of finally like my Scottish dream was Inverness and be able to travel. So I was with Elder Watson for 3 months. And then my last 6 weeks, I had Elder McNee, Joshua McNee from England, Leeds, I want to say. He kind of finished me on. I feel bad. I probably was trunky and again, didn't appreciate him as much as I should have. But still worked hard and saw some good people kind of attracted to the church. And I'm sure there's probably lots of things I missed. I mean, I'm trying to remember 2 years of our lives 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think you did pretty darn good.
But yeah.
You took me on a mental journey for sure.
Yeah.
That was awesome. And I'm definitely jealous of the travel in Inverness.
Yeah.
I was because I think at that point in time you were zone leaders in Inverness, right?
Yeah.
So by the time I became a zone leader, we didn't have enough missionaries to have a zone in Motherwell and in Inverness. Yeah. So I was the Aberdeen zone leader, and while I was there, we went to Stornoway in the Isle of Lewis for a little getaway to visit a greenie. But like beyond that, like we did the drive a few times to Inverness for things, but beyond that, like I wish we would have had a little bit more freedom to go wherever we needed to, because that would have been an epic opportunity.
Yeah. So did they just merge the Inverness zone then into Aberdeen zone?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, wow.
So, but again, it had everything to do with numbers. Like, we've had conversations where it was just kind of slowly creeping down lower and lower until I think by the time I went home, it was pretty close to, if not below 100 missionaries in the whole mission. So
yeah, so I know when I got there, it was like, I think approaching 200 missionaries, maybe 180 or something. And then when I left, I think it was like 110, 115. They just, boom, down. Yeah. Which is a shame, but
it is. I mean, but the benefit that I see with that is that we were very, very fortunate to be those missionaries to serve in that land. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, do you have any specific memories or interactions that that you're fond of with the Wilkersons or the Wilkinsons, excuse me, or the Vreens?
Yeah. The Wilkinsons, I really like the Wilkinsons. So the Wilkinsons are from St. George. I didn't know them beforehand, but when I got there, they were so excited because someone from St. George was coming. And they and there was an office couple, the Barlows were from St. George. And so we get together and just talk about St. George. I remember interviews with Sister Wilkins and was like, what's the gossip in St. George? Did you hear, right, this is being built and this change and what have you heard? And so it was always fun just to kind of talk about things. And so they went home before I did. So it was really cool when I came home, the Wilkinsons attended my homecoming, which was just really awesome to have your mission president there. And so it was kind of, I was a little bit nervous of like, right, here's this spiritual giant. He's got to listen to me. I don't know anything. But I mean, just so nice. And President Wilkinson was just, he was really a spiritual giant. I just remember the zone conferences. He spent a lot going through Tad Callister's Infinite Atonement, that book. And I just loved that book. And then at Christmas, I think I was only there for one Christmas with him. He recited, what's it called? The Other Wise Men or the Fourth Wise Men. I don't know if you guys have heard that story.
Yeah.
But he like recited it like from memory and just like with power. It was just such a strong meeting, but just so cool. And again, like that St. George connection was always fun with the Wilkinsons.
That's cool.
And then the Vreens came in. It's kind of fun because I was a zone leader in Motherwell when the Vreens came in. So I feel like I got a chance to meet with them a little bit more than if I wasn't a zone leader. And Sister Vreens just, I mean, you guys know, I mean, she's just awesome and just so nice and just so much energy. And the things I remember about President Vreens was just his jokes. Like he would say just funny things. I feel like it was pretty soon meeting him. I don't know, like it was a group of missionaries who talked about like when he was dating Sister Vreens and like, I guess her dad was a mission president and he talked about making out in the mission home and things. I'm like, okay, that's what you want to tell us about. Like just crazy things. And then my exit interview with him, he's like, okay, I know about your future companion. Your next companion is going to be Rosie. She has a purple mohawk and a pierced nose and weighs like 320 pounds. And I'm like, okay, thanks, President. That's what you're telling me. But just had jokes about things and just, again, I love him because, again, whether he was new or not, but just kind of let us do kind of what we wanted. Like trusted us to do what needed to be done. And I remember like zone conferences, like we had ideas of like, I think it was Elder Watson and I, we were talking about, I can remember communicating or something. And we wanted to play the clip, Who's on First by Abbott and Costello. I don't know if you guys have heard that baseball thing. And so, and again, it's funny thinking about it because now it's like, okay, Who's on First? I pull it up on YouTube and show it. But like we had to hunt down like CD shops in Inverness and Aberdeen to find this clip. And eventually got a member to get it for us. But he's like, yeah, go for it. That sounds cool. But then shut down. So I know some elders wanted to show like a clip from Beverly Hills Ninja with Chris Farley. But he's like, no, maybe not that. But anyways, we're an older group of missionaries. That just,
I'm gonna have to rewatch that movie. I'm gonna have to rewatch that movie now and see what the part was that they said was applicable to missionary work.
Yeah, I can't even remember what part it was or what they wanted to teach. I don't remember who the elders are. They were the zone leaders in Aberdeen at the time. But so anyways, I remember, the Vreens just, I mean, both of them are just awesome, both mission presidents. Just fun memories of them. I wish I would have kept in touch better with them. Like everybody, I feel bad. But
it's all good. This is a good stepping stone in that direction,
Yeah.
The thing that we've all realized is that, like you're talking about, we're all at around that 20-year mark of either going or coming home. And there's just so many memories that it's been great to reminisce and remember on those fond times that we all shared together. I mean, we all have this common bond. We didn't have a relationship with you in the mission, Chad, but it doesn't matter. We're talking about places we love and people we love, and it's been a lot of fun to reconnect at this point in time.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate your time, Chad. Is there anybody else, you talked about your companions. Is there any other missionaries you just served around, or anybody else you want to shout out as part of this?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think any of my companions, if you guys get them on here, Luter or Schaefer or Weaver, Little Webb, Benyon, Watson would be good. McNee. I think other missionaries I served around. Elder Newcomb. He's from Australia, Luke Newcomb.
Luke,
he was in Coatbridge when I was in Motherwell, and so I feel like we went on exchanges a lot and just kind of vibed. He was cool. Also, I appreciate him more now because his mom named him after Luke Skywalker, and so I really appreciate it now that I named my son Kenobi. And so
that's cool. I love it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, any of the ones from my group I think would be fun. I think cool because you've already talked to Cooley and Wright. I can't remember elders there. Marble and Jones and I can't remember now everybody. Yeah, I think any of the older ones.
The one thing that we'll just say to you is, as you rack your brain here live in our conversation, take some time, share this when it comes out.
Yeah.
And invite them to check it out. I mean, we have our website, 51spila.com, that you reached out to us on. Fill out a contact sheet and come on. Or, I mean, overall, we have a S.E.M group page on Facebook that if people want to come and be entertained by regular posts from me in regards to the podcast and other things amongst our group that have served in Scotland, I mean, we'd love to have everybody come together and continue this. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I really appreciate you guys. Like I said, I listened to people I knew, and I've been kind of going through them now, and it's fun to hear other people's stories, especially people that have served in my areas. I think it was your interview with Elder Dunn, who served in Motherwell after me, and ended up baptizing the Mitchells, who were people that Benyon and I found through a media referral down in Carstairs Junction. And I remember I looked at my journal, I'm like, these people are going to be baptized. They're so awesome. And then we never saw it. And then to find out that they did get baptized and they're doing well. It's so fun to hear these things of people. And there's another one I was listening to. Some people served in Inverness and talking about some of the members there. It's just it's kind of fun to hear about these members and people. And, you hope that you make a difference. And so I'm excited to hear about some of the other people you interviewed. Maybe we'll run into, these missionaries that served years after I did, if maybe they give me updates on the people that I met and cared about at the time that I failed at keeping in contact with. Or even just, planting those seeds and stuff. But
one piece of information that you'll appreciate, Chad, is that I think within the last maybe year or two, they demolished the Inverness chapel and rebuilt it. And I think it's 2 or 3 times the size of what it used to be now.
Oh, wow.
But apparently it's just this beautiful building there sitting on the River Ness.
Yeah.
And so that's one place that I'm looking forward to visiting in the future, to go and see that what used to be that quaint building with a huge parking lot.
Yeah.
To actually have a building that suits the lot that's been next to it for such a long time.
Yeah. And I know they had a portable in the back that they would do primary and things. And so it's great that they have that. And
yeah, exactly.
And hopefully hopefully it's growing down there. Cause it was a good ward. There was, again, interesting people. I forgot to mention one more story. Inverness, again, the strange people. My first day in Inverness, we were going to the library to email, and a drunk guy just came and kissed me and started talking to us and told us he's going to jail soon, but wanted to book a Mormon. And but there was a guy there. It was 2 actually happened on the same day. So earlier in the day, we were chapping. I think it was Elder Watson and I. It might have been McNee, but I think it was Watson. And we knock at the door, and this guy comes to the door. Big guy, big white beard with a big staff, tattoos all over his arms. And he's comes out and says, "Who's the greatest prophet?" And we're like, Jesus. And he's like, "Okay, after Jesus, who's the greatest prophet?" And we're like, Moses. He's like, "That's right, Moses." And started telling us about Passover. He's like, "You never know, Moses may be walking amongst you." So we found out that Moses lived in Inverness that day. covered in tattoos, living in a council house. But later that day, we went and we met a guy. He took his name off the church, but he's called, I can't remember his first name, Brother McPherson, and just a nice guy. But we were talking to him one day, talking about the church, trying to get him to come back. And he told us about he went to Church of Scotland and they did communion. He really liked how he did the sacrament every week. And we started getting on the thing of why we use water instead of wine. And then he tells us the Savior used to only drink a beaker of Spanish red wine at lunch, but he never drank more than that because they don't want to be known as a wine bibber. But when he comes for a second coming, he wants to drink white wine because that's what he's always wanted. And we're like, okay, that's kind of strange. And then he told us about how Mary was the illegitimate daughter of a fair-haired Norwegian. And so because she was illegitimate, she had to go work at a brothel, but her mom said, no, you're not going to work at a brothel. We'll make sure, and Joseph came and helped her not work in a brothel. And he told us about how she'd go washing, but the women would strip down to the waist, but Mary never would. And he told us how she made beef stew for the Savior, which was his favorite dish, and she prepared the meal at the Last Supper. And so he's telling us all these things, and he's like, when Joseph and Mary died 2 weeks apart, and the disciples would go around saying in death they were never separated, and she helped get a bunch of gold from the disciples before she died, and they made it into a bell called the Mary Bell. And he's like, oh, it was in Inverness a few years ago. But he's like, Mary will really get along with Joseph at the second coming because they're next to each other in the hierarchy. And we're like, what are you talking about, the hierarchy? It's like, well, there's a hierarchy in the second coming. First is Heavenly Father, then Jesus, then the Holy Ghost. And then it was, I think, Moses, then Joseph Smith, Mary, Noah, Abraham. And then David was 18 because of the whole Bathsheba thing. But he's like, because Joseph was 5 and Mary was 6, they're going to get along really well with each other at the second coming. And we're like, Brother McPherson, how do you know all this? And he's like, well, they told me. And we're like, they told you? And he's like, yeah, I don't see them, but I hear their voices and I know what they look like. And they told me all about this. And so he described what Moses looked like. Moses had a gray mustache. And I think Abraham had a thin white mustache. They all had mustaches. None of them had beards. And he's like, I told this people before I was in an insane asylum for a while. The last missionaries I told never came back. And we're like, really? That's interesting. We just went in a few times. He just tells us just the craziest things. Tells about there's 2 Joseph Smiths. One is buried in Salt Lake and one's buried in Nauvoo. But we don't know which one's the real one. And just, again, strange people just in Scotland. I love the people, but there's just crazy people. One more I have all sorts of stories of weird people. When I was in Motherwell, I think it was with Elder Anderson, we went to this tower. We used to call it Junkie Tower because we'd find needles in the stairwells. And the elevator was out of service for a long time because too many people peed in it. And so they had to replace it. But Elder Anderson guy and I got in the elevator one day, and this guy gets in and he turns to us and says, what are the 10 commandments? And I'd learned them in young men's, my young men's president, give me pictures to help you memorize them. And so I just spouted them off, and he's like, that's right. The last people I asked didn't know, so I robbed them. And then he got off the elevator and walked away. And we're like, okay, I guess thanks, Brother Corey, for teaching me the 10 commandments so we didn't get robbed. But
my gosh.
I love Scotland, but there's just so many interesting people. And
yeah
it's fun to remember the craziness. But yeah,
wonderful.
Right, you work hard and you serve people, but then there's something about being a missionary that just tracks, at least I don't know, tracks people that are out there to you.
Yeah. Yep. We're out there among the people all the time. So
yeah. I mean, you're going to their houses, knocking on their doors. Of course, you're going to run into Moses.
During the day.
Yeah. in their house until the day.
But most people are at work. Yeah.
But,
wow.
Yeah. So
that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Chad.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And send anybody our way you want to. We're glad to chat.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you, Chad. We'll express our love to you as our brother in Scotland. Thank you again just for taking time to reminisce, and we'll certainly be in touch more often. So we'll say cheerio to you tonight.
Thank you guys for doing this. You guys are awesome for doing this. So,
all right. Sounds good. Well, have a great night. Thanks again, Chad. Cheerio, brother.
You too. Have a good night.